Hey everybody, it's Charles from HumbleMechanic.com. Today, taking your questions on AC not working, cruise control not working, installing a new engine, and more. This is episode 246 of the Humble Mechanic Podcast. Remember, if you want to get a question on a show like this, email me, Charles, at HumbleMechanic.com. Put question for Charles in the subject line. Ask your question right at the top. Give me some space. Give me all the details of the question after you've actually asked me the question so I know what your question is while I'm reading all the details. I know that sounds really nitpicky, but it helps me out so much to know what your actual question is rather than having to pluck it out of 1,000 words all mashed into one paragraph. Also remember, there's audio-only versions of these as well as many other videos that I do. You can find those on iTunes, Stitcher, Google, or over at HumbleMechanic.com. All right, let's talk about the sponsor of the day, which is CRP Automotive. CRP deals in a ton of OE maintenance and repair parts, timing belt kits, suspension components, and even fluids. In fact, they make the factory DSG fluid for Volkswagen and Audi. So check them out at crpautomotive.com. Also, if you want discounts to places like Black Forest, Eastwood, MT Knives, Kerma TDI, Adams Polishes, Scanner Danner, and a whole bunch more, check out that crew membership program. Great way to support the show, but forget about that. You guys score awesome discounts that you're not going to find together anywhere else. As always, links to all that and everything we talk about will be in the description. And real quick, guys, before we jump to your questions, I'm actually thinking about changing the format of these Q&A shows a little bit, thinking about breaking it up into separate videos for YouTube and then pushing them all together in one audio podcast. I think that's going to actually do a little bit better for the videos and still give you the same kind of feel if that's what you're into for the audio podcast. Do me a favor and let me know down below what you guys think. Sometimes these longer videos don't do very well, and I want to make sure that they're doing well, and I want to make sure that the audio podcast does well in addition to that. So if you guys have any feedback for me, I would truly, truly appreciate it. Remember, this show is for you guys. It's all about you, so I want to make sure that it is the best it can be, and you guys enjoy it. All right. All that million things wrapped up. Let's hit these questions. First one comes from Ken. I have a MK4 R32. It's in nice shape for 124K. And like yours, I'm going through some rehab. Yeah, no kidding. No automotive expert whatsoever, but that's okay, Ken. You can do a lot of this stuff. Recently, my AC just doesn't get cold. Had it diagnosed as a bad pressure switch, and also the air control module is bad. Had the pressure switch replaced, but not the module because it was another $400. Will this cause any catastrophic engine problems? I live in New England, so I don't always use my AC, and with fall coming up, cool temperatures keep the engine from overheating, so my radiator fan is technically not necessary. My temp gauge never goes above 190. Should I wait to find the money to get the OEM module or buy 4 for the price of 1? Much thanks, Ken. Okay. So I think, Ken, what I probably would ask you if we were having a conversation about this is, what do you mean by air control module? Is that the control head inside the car, the one you actually boop the buttons on to change the temperature? Or more likely what I'm thinking is it's probably the fan control module, the one kind of tucked up underneath the battery, bolted to the frame rail or bolted to the battery tray itself. Nope, it's bolted to the frame rail. That's probably more likely what the problem is. That is an ultra common failure on MK4s across the board, no matter the engine, no matter the year. That is a very sensitive, fragile, delicate, made of glass kind of part. All right, so good, your temp gauge doesn't go above 190. A couple things to remember about that. Your gauge reads 190, right? It's dead straight up. The actual temperature range the engine can be functioning in is more like this, right? 180 to 205 or so. The gauge will never move. So guys, when you see that temp gauge move on your MK4, your vehicle is starting to overheat and is probably way hotter than that 191 when that gauge just first goes boop. It's much hotter than that. So keep that in mind. This may be something you want to monitor with a scan tool. I'm not sure, Ken. You don't have to be an expert to monitor things with a scan tool. You just look at it like on your phone or something like that and watch it, because you do really want to make sure you're not overheating the car. With winter coming up, I'm looking out my window and there's, I don't know, 1/4 inch of snow on the ground, which is super weird for the South. We want to make sure we're also considering not just air conditioning, but the dehumidification, if that's a word, the dehumidifying of the interior of our car, right? We want to make sure that we're pulling some of that humidity out of the vehicle to defog our windows much faster, and your AC compressor is often responsible for that because it not only will cool that air or not really how it works, but it not only helps provide cool air into the cabin, but it also dehumidifies the air as well. So consider that. Honestly, I'd probably buy one that maybe wasn't an OEM one. There are plenty of them out there, and this is a pretty easy DIY. It's two 10mm bolts. Ken, the biggest problem you're gonna have on your R32 is pulling all that undershield off to get up underneath it. The two 10mm are right in front of the battery. Undo those, and then go up underneath and unplug it. In fact, pulling off the paneling underneath the car, problem number one, like hardest part. The one right behind it is getting those connectors unplugged. They're on there really, really tight. When you do that, also make sure to look inside of the connector really, really well, and look inside the module really, really well. You're looking for any signs of corrosion. Those are known good units to collect moisture and cause those wires and the wire connectors to corrode. So you want to take a really good look at that. If you have any corrosion in there, either repin the connectors or get that cleaned out. You don't want to cause the problem in the new module. But man, I probably wouldn't wait. I would go ahead and get it done. If that means you buy a $50 one instead of a $400 one and it lasts 4 months, cool. I would go ahead and do that. You want the car to be functioning properly, and you know, if it's $50, cool. If you got to spend $400, you got to spend $400. It kind of sucks. Those fan control modules are ridiculously priced, in my opinion, but they do so much for the car. You also want to check that fuse panel on top of the battery, make sure those fuses look good. The other thing about temperature changes and things like that on these generation cars is the foam on the blend doors comes off on these too. You guys saw my video on the Mark III where we replaced that. My R32, I got little bits of foam laying on the passenger floorboard because it's all coming out of the vents. So again, I'm looking at snow here. It's freezing out. That's going to be a job I'm going to do very, very soon because the heat, it ain't hot. And I want to get nice warm heat. Also going to have to fix the heated seats in the car. It's just cold to drive, right? So Ken, I hope that helps. Dude, get the cheapo fan control module. Don't expect it to last forever, but if it can get you through a period of time where you can then replace it with a known good OEM one, or something from like FCP Euro, which has a lifetime warranty, then who cares, right? Who cares how long it lasts? You may want to do that as well. So dude, good luck. Congratulations. Love talking to other Mark IV R32 owners. It's a good time, and man, that's just such a cool car. I'm actually thinking about going to take it out in the snow and having a little fun on summer performance tires. All right, next one up is from Paul. Should I replace the engine in a straight 2010 Volkswagen Tiguan? Bought the car with 150K and it was great for a few months, but then one day I heard a noise while driving and the temp gauge slowly gone up and hit red. Boy, we just talked about temp gauges. Took the car to both a VW dealership and an independent, and it appears a camshaft that turns the spur belt that moves the water pump has somehow become welded inside. Yep, not terribly common, but not an uncommon thing either, Paul. I feel bad about giving the car up and have priced an engine at 5 to 7K in a car that I paid $4,000 for you. Do you think it's worth it? Thanks, enjoy the show, Paul. So Paul, gosh, I don't know, man. Car you paid $4,000 for, that's a pretty good price on a Tiguan. 2010, we're knocking on the door at 10 years old. Is it worth putting a $5,000 to $7,000 engine in it? I'm gonna say probably not. If you can find an older used engine and get that down to $3,000, I might be in for that for a total of like $7,000 on the car. But man, putting a brand new $7,000 engine in it, I'm not into, because in addition to the engine, we're probably gonna wanna highly consider a turbocharger. If the car got that hot, how hot did the oil get? Was there any damage to the turbocharger? That's something you're really going to want to consider. You're also going to have to consider that it's not just the component of the engine we're buying. It's going to be all the bolts and all the gaskets for the components that are not installed on the engine when you get it. So add probably another $500 or $600 worth of miscellaneous junk that you're going to have to buy as well. Let's talk a little bit about that failure though. The failure that Paul's engine experienced is actually the balance shaft seizing. The way the water pump is driven on that 2-liter engine is it's actually driven by the timing chain, sort of. So on the front side of the engine, which is the passenger side of the vehicle, is where our timing chain set lives. We first have the oil pump drive, then we have the actual timing chain drive, which turns the camshafts, then we have the balance shaft chain all the way at the back. That balance shaft chain goes from the crankshaft to the rear balance shaft, then to an intermediate sprocket. That intermediate sprocket then drives the balance shaft on the front, not the front of the engine really, but at the front of the vehicle. That balance shaft then drives a gear that turns a belt, that turns a water pump, and that's how we do it. Remember, the balance shafts rotate opposite directions of each other. And I have heard of many, not a ton, but enough that I've heard of it, failures of that balance shaft either seizing or the plastic coming apart and locking it up, which is also seizing, and then causing things like the water pump not to turn, and or oil pressure issues is another super common one that's really come up in the last like 3 or 4 months, is those balance shafts not completely seizing, but actually clogging oil galleys with the plastic that I just mentioned and causing oil pressure concerns. And again, if our balance shaft seized, what other damage do we have? So man, you know, if you can get that price down to $2,500, $3,000, I'd probably do it, because you're still a $6,000 car, $7,000 car. It's a decent car for the price. $7,000, absolutely, I would not do that at all. This is just one of those, man. If you can find someone to buy it for $2,500, it might be just out, right? Wash your hands of it completely. Personally, I wouldn't pay $2,500 for a almost 10-year-old Tiguan with a bad engine, but I also have a really bad perspective of how much I'm willing to spend on cars. There's probably somebody out there that maybe has an engine for it that'll pay you $2,500. They'll drop their new engine in it, sell it for $6,000, and make a profit on it, and then you don't get totally crushed. So there is many options here, Paul. Unfortunately, none of them are probably going to be super awesome for you. But here's another thing, Paul. You could try and find a car that was wrecked with the CCTA engine in it, especially like rear end damage, and do an engine swap that way. These engines are pretty easy to swap in and out, and you could save a bunch of money doing it that way too. So Paul, good luck, guys. If you have any other suggestions for Paul on what he could do to save some money, I don't know that this particular engine is worth fixing. I think it's better to just get something else in there. But as always, to help out the community, drop that down in the comments. And Paul, good luck. And hey, you know what? Let us know what you decide and which route that you wanted to go. Or if you want to sell it, maybe there's somebody in the community that wants to pick it up that has an engine for it. All right, last one of the day. We're only doing 3 today because we had that stuff at the beginning. Is on a 2011 Jetta 2.5 automatic. I've had it for 2 years and my cruise control has never worked. Browsed several web pages and videos to see if it was a blown fuse. From what I gathered, the cruise control doesn't have a fuse. You are correct, it does not have a fuse. Some VW forums and web pages say it has to be reset if a battery is replaced. Some think it's possibly the contacts or the switch. Where should I start to look? Is this something I should have the dealer look at? Okay, a couple of things that can cause cruise not to work on the this generation Jetta. There is no fuse, you're correct. This is all ECM controlled, so there's no fuse for that. And if you had a blown ECM fuse, you'd have bigger problems than your cruise control not working. So what can cause cruise control not to working? A bad wheel speed sensor. If the car doesn't know how fast each wheel is turning, it ain't gonna let the cruise control work. A bad brake switch, brake light switch, or clutch switch if this is a manual transmission. When you are driving and you tap the brake, it's going to kill the cruise. On this generation, when you're driving and you push the clutch in, it's going to kill the cruise. Some of the newer ones, actually, you can shift gears and it won't kill the cruise. Pretty sure this one still will kill the cruise. Also, either the buttons on the steering wheel or the buttons on the stalk, depending on which way your car is set up. If, say, the cruise control on button or the actual set button aren't working, then of course your cruise control is not going to work either. Those, really the best way to monitor all those switches that I just talked about, or all those buttons that I just talked about, is to go in and look at them with the scan tool, because you can see as you push the button, the value changes. As you push the brake, the value changes. Now, the resetting with the battery or having it reset when you replace a battery, I've ran into that like twice, but it's not super common. Here's what my guess is, right? Because these are all just guesses anyway. My guess on this one is it's probably due to a software update. The 2011 2.5s, a bunch of years of the 2.5s did have multiple software updates, and there was one software update that when we did, it almost always turned off the cruise control. So what we would have to do is we would have to go back in with the scan tool and turn it on. This is just like if you put a new ECM in the car. It used to be that the cruise control wasn't turned on, and you had to go in and when you coded it and programmed it and did the immobilizer, you also had to turn the cruise control on. And I'm gonna guess that that's probably what happened. So what are you going to do to overcome this? I think you can actually do this with VADCOM, but honestly, I might consider taking it to the dealership, and here's why. If I'm not saying that you're going to get this for free, but this would be my argument if this were my car. I bought this car used, a software update was performed. It is a common thing. It's in the TSB about the software update that it may deactivate cruise control. Can you see if my cruise control is deactivated and just turn it back on? Now you might have to pay a diagnostic fee of 90 bucks, 100 bucks, whatever. And you know, if you're under 880, maybe we can put some pressure on the service department or Volkswagen to take care of that for you. I don't know if they're gonna, because the technician doing it ain't gonna get paid anything unless he gets paid by the dealership or she gets paid by the dealership anyway. So they're not gonna be too keen on, yeah, let me pull your car in and do diagnosis for free. But for me personally, if my cruise didn't work and I could pay 90 bucks to get it work, I would pay that because I use my cruise control all the time. It is the thing that helps keep my right foot off of the little pedal and just going the speed limit or thereabouts. So to me, it would be worth it. You'll have to decide if that's worth it to you. But my guess is that after that software update occurred, before you bought the car, that it just deactivated the cruise control. Whoever did the software update didn't turn it back on, which has happened a bunch of times. I've done it. I've seen it a ton of times. So I'm not like blaming a technician for not doing that, but that was a super duper common thing to have that kill the cruise control. You know, maybe the original owner never used the cruise control, so they never noticed it, or the software update was done on a trade-in, and the tech that did the software update never drove it after to confirm cruise control operation, and you, being the one that wanted to use it, have now confirmed that it does not work. So this to me is probably a dealership thing, or one of the independent shops that's really good, that has factory equipment, but I would probably go to the dealer because I would put a little pressure on them or Volkswagen to try and get that paid for. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up there. As always, questions or comments, drop them down below. Also, let me know what you think about that formatting change that I'm thinking about doing. I haven't worked it all out yet, but that's kind of just an idea that I had, and I want some feedback from you. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Keep the questions coming, and I will talk to you again next time.